Picture this. It's a quiet summer night in Pittsburgh, July 1987. A father walks into a hospital room, expecting to see his 3-year-old daughter, Lily Caldwell, smiling despite her battle with a serious heart condition. Instead, he finds an empty bed, her Care Bear sticker-covered mobility scooter gone, and no one with answers. For 2 years, Ethan and Sarah Caldwell live in a nightmare. Their little girl vanished without a trace. Then, in July 1989, a sewer crew working near the Monongahela River pulls something chilling from the muck. Lily's scooter, dumped just weeks ago. How does a sick child disappear from a hospital? And what dark secret was hidden for 2 years? Stay with us to unravel a mystery that will leave you speechless. Welcome to the Crime O'Clock, where we dive into the most gripping true crime stories that keep you up at night. Today's case is one of the most heartbreaking we've ever covered. The disappearance of Lily Caldwell, a little girl stolen from the place meant to keep her safe. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a story. This is the Crime O'Clock, your home for mysteries that demand answers. Lily's story takes us back to 1980s Pittsburgh, a city reeling from the steel industry's collapse, where one family's world was shattered in a single night. We'll uncover every twist, from a shocking sewer discovery to a truth so horrific it's hard to believe. Stick around, because you won't want to miss a second of this. Let's set the clock and dive in. In the summer of 1987, Pittsburgh was a city of grit and struggle, its steel mills fading into memory as families like the Caldwells carved out their lives in the shadow of a changing world. At the heart of this story is Lily Caldwell, a 3-year-old girl with a smile that could light up even the gloomiest hospital room. Born with congenital heart disease, Lily faced challenges most kids her age couldn't imagine. Her tiny heart struggled to pump enough blood, leaving her breathless and weak, dependent on oxygen tanks and frequent hospital stays at UPMC Children's Hospital. But Lily was a fighter. Her big blue eyes sparkled with mischief, and she had a laugh that made nurses pause in the hallways, forgetting their exhaustion for a moment. She loved Care Bears, those colorful characters plastered across lunchboxes and Saturday morning cartoons in the 80s. Her prized possession was a pediatric mobility scooter, a clunky, battery-powered contraption she decorated with stickers of Tenderheart Bear and Funshine Bear, her favorites. She called it her magic chariot, zipping down hospital corridors whenever her strength allowed, giggling as she went. Lily's parents, Ethan and Sarah Caldwell, were her biggest champions. Ethan, a 32-year-old bank accountant, spent his days hunched over ledgers, crunching numbers in a cramped office downtown. He wasn't one for grand gestures, but his love for Lily showed in the quiet moments, reading her bedtime stories about Rainbow Bright or tucking her stuffed unicorn, Sparkle, beside her in the hospital bed. Sarah, a 30-year-old night shift nurse at a nearby community hospital, had a knack for staying calm under pressure. She'd seen her share of emergencies in the ER, but nothing prepared her for the relentless worry of being Lily's mom. Between shifts, she'd drive straight to UPMC to sit by Lily's side, brushing her blonde curls and singing lullabies from old radio hits like Sweet Child O' Mine. The Caldwells weren't perfect, money was tight, and the hospital bills piled up, but they poured everything into keeping Lily's spirits high and her condition stable. Lily's hospital stays were a fact of life. Her heart condition meant weeks at a time in the pediatric ward, hooked up to monitors that beeped like a metronome. Her room, number 412, was a familiar space, with a window overlooking Pittsburgh's smoky skyline and a door she'd covered in Care Bear stickers to make it her own. The nurses adored her, slipping her extra Jell-O cups when no one was looking. But the real constant in Lily's world was Dr. Gregory Voss, her pulmonologist. At 45, Dr. Voss was a respected figure at UPMC, with a warm smile and a knack for explaining complex medical terms in ways parents could understand. He'd been Lily's doctor for over a year, overseeing her oxygen therapy and heart medications with meticulous care. What set him apart, though, was his reputation beyond the hospital walls. Dr. Voss was a local hero of sorts, volunteering at children's shelters across Pittsburgh, organizing toy drives and reading programs for sick kids. Parents trusted him implicitly. He was the kind of doctor who'd sit with a scared child, telling stories about his own childhood dog to distract them from a needle prick. To Ethan and Sarah, Dr. Voss was a godsend. He'd spend extra time with Lily, checking her charts long after his shift ended, even bringing her small gifts like a Care Bear coloring book. Lily would light up when he walked in, calling him Dr. Gregg in her small, breathless voice. He'd joke about her scooter being the fastest in the hospital, making her giggle despite the tubes under her nose. For the Caldwells, stretched thin by work and worry, Voss's dedication was a lifeline. They'd often leave Lily in his care during Sarah's night shifts, trusting the hospital's staff to watch over her. Ethan would visit before work, kissing Lily's forehead and promising to bring her a new sticker for her scooter. It was a routine they'd settled into, a fragile balance of hope and exhaustion, built on the belief that Lily was safe in the hospital's hands. But beneath the surface, there were cracks. The hospital, like much of Pittsburgh in 1987, was under strain. Budget cuts meant fewer staff, overworked nurses, and outdated equipment. Security was lax. Cameras in the service corridors hadn't worked in months, and night shifts were often understaffed. Ethan and Sarah didn't dwell on these things. They had to trust the system. They had no reason to question Dr. Voss, whose volunteer work was praised in local newspapers, whose bedside manner seemed to make Lily's pain more bearable. Yet, as we'll see, trust can be a dangerous thing, especially when it's placed in the wrong hands. Lily's life, so full of love and resilience, was about to be shattered in a way no one could have predicted, and the clues to what happened would stay buried for 2 long years, until a chance discovery in a Pittsburgh sewer changed everything. What's the most heartbreaking true crime case from the 1980s you've heard? Maybe it's a story of a missing child, a betrayal of trust, or a mystery that hit close to home. Drop it in the comments below to keep this conversation alive. We're all here to uncover the truth together. It was July 7th, 1987, a muggy summer morning in Pittsburgh, the kind where the air clung to your skin and the city steel mills, even in their decline, cast a faint haze over the skyline. Ethan Caldwell woke at 5:30 a.m., same as always, careful not to disturb Sarah, who'd collapsed into bed after a grueling night shift at the community hospital. He showered quietly, dressed in the dark, and grabbed his thermos of coffee, planning to spend an hour with Lily before his day at the bank began. The drive to UPMC Children's Hospital was routine, the streets quiet except for the occasional delivery truck rattling by. Ethan parked in the lot, nodded to the security guard smoking near the entrance, and took the elevator to the pediatric ward on the 4th floor. Room 412 was Lily's home away from home, its door covered in Care Bear stickers she'd proudly placed herself. Ethan pushed it open, already smiling, picturing Lily's sleepy grin as she spotted him, maybe clutching her stuffed unicorn, Sparkle, or asking for a new story about her favorite cartoon. But the room was wrong. The bed was empty, the sheets pulled back in a messy tangle, as if someone had left in a hurry. Sparkle lay on the floor, its horn bent from the fall. The monitors, usually beeping with Lily's heart rate and oxygen levels, were silent, their leads dangling like forgotten wires. Her mobility scooter, the one with Tenderheart Bear and Funshine Bear stickers, was gone. For a moment, Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, his mind scrambling for explanations. Maybe they'd taken her for an early test, a chest x-ray, or an EKG. Maybe a nurse had wheeled her to the playroom to distract her from a bad night. He stepped into the hall, his thermos still in hand, and flagged down a nurse flipping through a clipboard at the station. She looked exhausted, her eyes heavy from the overnight shift. "Where's Lily?" he asked, his voice sharper than he meant. "Room 412, my daughter." The nurse frowned, checking her chart. "Lily Caldwell? She should be in her room. Let me check." She moved quickly, peering into 412, her face tightening as she saw the empty bed. Within minutes, the ward was chaos. Nurses checked other rooms, calling out to each other over the clatter of metal carts. A security guard with a bulky walkie-talkie jogged down the hall, his boots squeaking on the linoleum. Ethan followed, his heart pounding, asking anyone who'd listen if they'd seen his daughter. No one had. The night nurse, now pale, admitted she'd been swamped with a patient emergency down the hall around 3 a.m. She hadn't checked Lily's room in hours. The head nurse paged Dr. Gregory Voss, but his answering service said he'd left at 6 p.m. the previous evening and wasn't due back until 7 a.m. Ethan's world tilted. He called Sarah, waking her from a dead sleep, his voice shaking as he told her Lily was gone. She was at the hospital in 20 minutes, still in her wrinkled scrubs, her eyes wild with panic. By then, the Pittsburgh police had arrived, their notepads out, asking questions Ethan could barely process. When had he last seen Lily? What was she wearing? Who had access to her room? He remembered kissing her forehead the night before, her small hand clutching his finger, promising to bring her a new Care Bear sticker in the morning. She'd been wearing her favorite hospital gown, the one with tiny rainbows, and her oxygen cannula was in place, helping her breathe. The police searched the ward, checking bathrooms, closets, even the laundry chutes, but found nothing. Security admitted the cameras in the service corridors, near the loading dock and staff entrances, had been broken for weeks, casualty of budget cuts. No footage, no witnesses, no sign of Lily. The hospital went into lockdown, but it was too late. Lily's absence was a gaping wound. Sarah, usually so composed, clutched Sparkle and sobbed, asking how a 3-year-old, tethered to medical equipment, could vanish from a locked ward. Ethan felt numb, his accountant's mind grasping for logic where there was none. Had someone taken her for ransom? But the Caldwells weren't rich. Their savings were drained by medical bills. Was it a mistake? A mix-up with another patient? The police interviewed every staff member on duty. Nurses, orderlies, janitors, even the cafeteria worker who delivered trays at midnight. No one saw anything unusual. Dr. Voss arrived at 7 a.m., looking shaken, and told detectives he'd left the hospital at 6 p.m. the previous evening, his keycard records confirming it. He lived alone, so no one could verify his whereabouts, but he was cooperative, offering to review Lily's chart for any medical clues. The police noted his concern, his pristine reputation, and moved on. Days turned into weeks with no leads. The local papers ran headlines, "Pittsburgh girl vanishes from hospital," and radio stations like WV pleaded for tips, but nothing surfaced. The Caldwells plastered missing posters across the city, Lily's smiling face next to her scooter, her blue eyes staring out from grainy photocopies. Ethan kept replaying that morning, wondering if he'd missed a sign, a stranger in the halls, a sound in the night. Sarah, with her nurse's instincts, questioned the hospital security, but the administration deflected, citing understaffing and old equipment. The police chased theories, a vagrant sneaking in, a disgruntled employee, even a far-fetched idea about organ trafficking. But every lead fizzled out. No ransom note, no sightings, no trace of Lily's scooter or the oxygen tank she needed to survive. The case grew colder with each passing month, and the Caldwells were left with nothing but questions and a hollow ache that refused to fade. Little did they know, the answer to Lily's disappearance was closer than they could imagine, hidden behind a facade of trust and waiting for a chance discovery to break the silence. The summer of 1987 faded into a blur of grief for Ethan and Sarah Caldwell, their lives forever altered by the night Lily vanished from UPMC Children's Hospital. Pittsburgh moved on, its streets humming with the clatter of buses, the chatter of AM radio, and the slow grind of a city grappling with the steel industry's collapse. But for the Caldwells, time stopped. Their small row house in the South Side, once filled with Lily's laughter and the hum of her oxygen machine, felt like a museum of loss. Her room remained untouched. Care Bear curtains hung limp. Her stuffed unicorn, Sparkle, sat on the bed, and a box of unopened stickers for her mobility scooter gathered dust in the corner. Ethan and Sarah clung to these remnants, unable to pack them away, as if letting go meant admitting Lily was gone for good. Ethan, now 33, threw himself into his work at the bank, his days consumed by endless columns of numbers typed on an IBM typewriter. The monotony was a shield, a way to keep his mind from spiraling into the what-ifs that haunted him. Had he missed something that morning in room 412? Could he have stayed longer the night before, held her hand a little tighter? At home, he'd sit in silence, staring at the rotary phone, willing it to ring with news. Sarah, 31, coped differently. Her night shifts at the community hospital stretched longer, sometimes back-to-back, as if the chaos of the ER could drown out her pain. She'd scrub her hands raw, check charts twice, anything to stay busy. But in quiet moments, she'd replay Lily's last hospital stay, her small voice asking for a story, her fingers clutching Sarah's scrubs. The guilt was crushing. As a nurse, Sarah trusted the hospital system, yet had failed their daughter. The police investigation, led by Detective Karen Holt, hit dead end after dead end. The broken cameras in the hospital service corridors yielded no footage, and no witnesses came forward. Tips poured in after the story hit Pittsburgh's newspapers and KDKA radio, but most were vague. Sightings of a blonde girl that never panned out, or theories about runaways that didn't fit a 3-year-old tethered to medical equipment. Ethan and Sarah became fixtures at police headquarters, pressing for updates, their hope eroding with each, no new developments. They plastered missing posters across the city, from bus stops in Oakland to diners in the Strip District, Lily's smiling face staring out beside her Care Bear scooter. Volunteers from their church helped, but as months turned into a year, the community's attention drifted to newer tragedies. Ethan found a lifeline in an unlikely place, the Pittsburgh Crime Watch, a grassroots group of locals obsessed with unsolved cases. They met monthly in a church basement, trading theories over coffee and mimeograph newsletters. Ethan joined in early 1988, driven by desperation. He'd bring Lily's file, dog-eared police reports, hospital records, and a grainy photo of her scooter, and share her story, hoping someone might spot a clue he'd missed. The group's members, a mix of retirees, amateur sleuths, and grieving families, became his second family. They mailed bulletins to subscribers across Allegheny County, asking for tips about a blonde girl or a missing mobility scooter. Ethan pored over every response, driving to check vague leads. A child's shoe found near the Allegheny River, a stranger seen near a hospital. Nothing connected. Sarah, meanwhile, struggled with the public's fading interest. By 1988, Lily's story was old news, replaced by headlines about local elections or the Pirates' latest losing streak. She'd overhear co-workers whispering, assuming she and Ethan were moving on. But moving on wasn't possible. Sarah kept a notebook of Lily's medical needs, oxygen settings, medication schedules, ready for the day they'd bring her home. She'd check expiration dates on their stockpile of supplies, a painful ritual that kept hope alive. At night, she'd lie awake, imagining Lily scared and alone, wondering if she was still out there, needing her mother. The not knowing was worse than any diagnosis she'd faced in the ER. The police, under pressure to close cases, shifted focus to newer crimes. Detective Holt stayed in touch, but her calls grew less frequent, her tone heavy with apology. She'd interviewed every hospital staffer on duty that night, nurses, orderlies, even Dr. Gregory Voss, whose alibi checked out. Voss had left at 6 p.m., his keycard logged, and returned at 7 a.m., visibly shaken by Lily's disappearance. His reputation as a dedicated doctor and shelter volunteer made him above suspicion. The Caldwells didn't question it either. Voss had been their rock, calling to check on them even months after Lily vanished, offering kind words about her bravery. Ethan kept his number taped to the fridge, a reminder of the one person who seemed to understand their loss. By July 1989, 2 years had passed, and the Caldwells were shadows of themselves. Ethan's hair had grayed at the temples, his eyes sunken from sleepless nights. Sarah's smile, once a mirror of Lily's, was gone, replaced by a tight-lipped resolve. They'd stop talking about when Lily comes home. The words too heavy to say aloud. The Pittsburgh Crime Watch group kept Lily's case alive, reprinting her poster in their monthly bulletin, but even their optimism was fading. Ethan would sit at his kitchen table, flipping through police reports he'd memorized, searching for something, anything the detectives missed. Sarah would join him sometimes, her nurses scanning hospital logs, but the pages offered no answers. The city's pulse kept beating, radios blaring Cyndi Lauper, kids riding bikes in the summer heat. But for the Caldwells, Life was frozen in that empty hospital room. Yet, somewhere in Pittsburgh, the truth was waiting. A piece of evidence, overlooked for 2 years, was about to surface in the most unexpected place. A discovery that would crack open the case and force Ethan and Sarah to confront a reality far darker than they'd ever imagined. The clock was ticking, and the answers were closer than anyone realized. Have you ever followed a missing persons case through old newspapers or radio? Maybe you clipped articles or tuned in for updates, hoping for a breakthrough. What was it like living through that suspense? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We're all part of this journey to uncover the truth. By July 1989, 2 years had passed since Lily Caldwell vanished from UPMC Children's Hospital, and the weight of those years had carved deep lines into Ethan and Sarah Caldwell's lives. Pittsburgh kept moving, its rivers flowing, its bridges humming with traffic. But for the Caldwells, hope was a fragile thread, fraying with every silent day. Ethan still sat at his kitchen table most evenings, flipping through the worn pages of police reports, his coffee growing cold as he searched for answers that never came. Sarah, working her night shifts, would come home to a quiet house, her nurses training no match for the ache of not knowing where her daughter was. The Pittsburgh Crime Watch group kept Lily's story alive, mailing out their newsletters with her picture, but even their leads had dried up. The city, caught in the tail end of the 80s, was distracted by new headlines, local politics, pirate struggles, the buzz of Madonna's latest album. For Ethan and Sarah, though, the world was stuck on that muggy morning in July 1987, when they lost their little girl. Then, on a humid Tuesday morning, July 11th, 1989, Ethan's routine was shattered by a phone call. He was at his desk, punching numbers into a mechanical adding machine, the clack of keys blending with the hum of a box fan in his cramped office. The rotary phone on his desk rang, a jarring sound that made him spill coffee dangerously close to his ledger. The number wasn't familiar, just a local Pittsburgh area code, and for a moment he hesitated, thinking it might be another reporter chasing a stale story or a well-meaning neighbor offering belated condolences. But something, maybe instinct, maybe desperation, made him pick up. "Ethan Caldwell," he said, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "Mr. Caldwell, this is Detective Karen Holt with the Pittsburgh Police Department." Her tone was calm but carried an edge, like she was bracing herself for what came next. Ethan's heart skipped, his hand tightening around the receiver. "I need to speak with you about your daughter's case. There's been a development." 2 years of silence had taught Ethan not to hope too quickly, but those words hit like a jolt. The case had gone cold long ago, the detectives moving on to fresher tragedies, the files on Lily gathering dust. "What kind of development?" he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. "Did you find her?" Detective Holt paused, choosing her words carefully. "This morning, a maintenance crew working in the sewer system near the Monongahela River found something. A pediatric mobility scooter with an oxygen tank attached. The serial numbers matched the equipment listed in Lily's hospital records." Ethan's breath caught, the room spinning. A scooter. Lily's scooter. The one with Care Bear stickers she'd proudly placed herself. "What condition is it in?" he managed, gripping the edge of his desk to steady himself. "It's hers." "You're sure?" Holt's voice softened, but the weight of her words was heavy. "The serial numbers are match, and there are personal touches, stickers specifically. Tenderheart Bear and Funshine Bear, just like you described in your report. We need you to come to the station to confirm. But Mr. Caldwell, there's something else. The scooter hasn't been in the sewer for 2 years." Ethan's mind raced, struggling to process. "What do you mean?" he asked. Holt explained. The maintenance crew chief, a grizzled veteran who'd worked Pittsburgh's sewers for 15 years, had seen enough to know the signs. Based on the sediment patterns and the scooter's condition, minimal rust, fabric still intact despite the muck. It couldn't have been there more than a few weeks, maybe a month at most. Heavy rains in June had likely washed it into the system from an upstream storm drain. "Your daughter disappeared 2 years ago," Holt said, her voice careful. "But this scooter was dumped recently." Someone held on to it all this time, then got rid of it. We're trying to figure out why. The implication landed like a punch. Someone had kept Lily's scooter for 2 years. Someone who knew where it came from. Someone who'd been involved in her disappearance. Ethan's thoughts spiraled. Was Lily still alive? Or was this a sign of something worse? I need to call Sarah, he said, already reaching for his keys. We'll be there as soon as we can. Holt's voice was gentle but firm. Ask for me at the station, Mr. Caldwell. I know this is a lot. We're doing everything we can to get answers. Ethan hung up, his hand shaking, and dialed Sarah's number. She was probably sleeping after her shift, but this couldn't wait. As the phone rang, he grabbed his jacket, his mind flooded with questions. Why now? Why dump the scooter after 2 years? And most importantly, what did this mean for Lily? Sarah answered on the 5th ring, her voice thick with sleep. Ethan, what's wrong? They found Lily's scooter, he said, the words tumbling out. In the sewer system. The police need us at the station now. There was a long silence, then Sarah's voice, sharp and awake. I'm getting dressed. Meet you there. Ethan drove through Pittsburgh's morning traffic, the city's familiar landmarks, Point State Park, the Fort Pitt Bridge, blurring past. His accountant's brain, trained to find patterns, couldn't stop turning over Holt's words. A recently dumped scooter meant someone had been holding on to evidence, maybe watching the case fade from the headlines, thinking they were safe. But safe from what? The truth, the police, or something darker. At the Pittsburgh Police Department, Ethan and Sarah met Detective Holt in the evidence room, a sterile space that smelled of disinfectant and old metal. On a steel table, under harsh fluorescent lights, sat Lily's mobility scooter, even caked in sewer grime. Ethan knew it instantly. The frame, dulled by mud, still showed patches of its original bright blue. The oxygen tank, strapped to the back, was tarnished but intact. And there, barely visible under the dried sediment, were the Care Bear stickers, Funshine Bear's yellow fur, Tenderheart's red heart. Sarah's breath hitched, her hand squeezing Ethan's until it hurt. It's hers, she whispered, her nurse's composure cracking. Ethan nodded, unable to speak. His fingers brushing a half-peeled sticker of Cheer Bear Lily had added just days before she vanished. He could still see her, small hands carefully placing it, giggling about her magic chariot. Detective Holt stood across the table, her expression professional, but not unkind. Can you confirm this is Lily's? She asked. Ethan managed a nod, his throat tight. It's hers. No question. Holt explained what they'd found so far. The scooter had been lodged against a grate 2 miles into the sewer system, where the Monongahela's tunnels converged. The forensics team, using the limited tools of 1989, basic chemical analysis, sediment layering, confirmed it hadn't been submerged long. The frame showed no deep corrosion. The fabric seat was stained but not rotted, and the oxygen tank's valve was still functional. If this had been in the water since 1987, Holt said, it'd be in pieces. The metal would be rusted through, the fabric gone. This was stored somewhere dry, maybe a garage or a basement, and only recently dumped. Sarah's voice, analytical despite her trembling hands, cut through. So someone kept it. For 2 years. They held on to it, then threw it away. Why? Holt set down her notepad, her eyes meeting theirs. That's what we're trying to figure out. The pattern suggests someone disposing of evidence, maybe because they're planning to move or because they think the case is forgotten. We're mapping every storm drain and access point in a 5-mile radius to trace where it entered the system. We've also alerted pawn shops and hospitals to watch for similar medical equipment. Ethan's mind was reeling. A basement, a garage. Someone in Pittsburgh had kept Lily's scooter, a piece of her, hidden away. Did that mean Lily was still out there? Or was this the final act of someone covering their tracks? As they left the station, Ethan and Sarah were quiet, the weight of the discovery pressing down. The scooter was a lifeline, a tangible piece of Lily, but it raised more questions than answers. Who had kept it all this time? Why get rid of it now? And most painfully, was Lily still alive? Or was this the last remnant of her they'd ever find? The answers were out there, buried in Pittsburgh's shadows, and Ethan was determined to find them, no matter what it took. The discovery of Lily Caldwell's mobility scooter in the Monongahela River's sewer system in July 1989 was like a spark in the dark for Ethan and Sarah Caldwell. For 2 years, since that devastating morning in July 1987, when their 3-year-old daughter vanished from UPMC Children's Hospital, they'd lived in a fog of grief and unanswered questions. The scooter, caked in mud but unmistakably Lily's, with its Care Bear stickers, was a lifeline, a tangible clue that someone had held onto it, hidden it away, only to dump it weeks ago. It meant the person responsible for Lily's disappearance was still out there, maybe still in Pittsburgh, maybe thinking they'd gotten away with it. But the question gnawed at Ethan: why now? Why, after 2 years of silence, had this piece of evidence surfaced? The answer, he felt, was close, and he wasn't about to let it slip away. Ethan's days as a bank accountant were spent in a haze of numbers, but his nights belonged to Lily's case. He turned their spare bedroom into a war room of sorts, the walls lined with maps of Pittsburgh, police reports, and faded newsletters from the Pittsburgh Crime Watch group. The group had been his anchor, a collection of locals who pored over unsolved cases with a passion that matched his own. They taught him how to dig deeper, to chase leads the police might overlook. Armed with their advice, Ethan started combing through old records at the Carnegie Library, using microfiche machines to scroll through yellowed newspaper articles and hospital directories. He wasn't sure what he was looking for, but the scooter's recent disposal felt like a crack in the case, a sign that someone was getting nervous. His focus turned to the hospital staff. From that night in 1987, the police had interviewed everyone: nurses, orderlies, security guards, doctors, but no one stood out. Ethan, though, wasn't satisfied. He started cross-referencing names from the hospital's 1987 roster with anything he could find: articles, public records, even society pages from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. One name kept surfacing: Dr. Gregory Voss, Lily's pulmonologist. Voss had been a constant in their lives before Lily disappeared, always there with a kind word or an extra check on her chart. His volunteer work at children's shelters was well known, his face often in the paper for organizing toy drives or reading to sick kids at community events. But Ethan's digging uncovered something unsettling. Voss's career wasn't as stable as his reputation suggested. Over the past 12 years, he'd worked at 4 hospitals: UPMC, Cincinnati Children's, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and Riley Hospital in Indianapolis. Each time, he'd left after inventory discrepancies or administrative reviews, vague terms that raised Ethan's suspicions. The first red flag came from a 1983 article in a Cincinnati paper. Voss had been reassigned after questions about missing medical supplies, oxygen tanks for lines, medications. The language was corporate, carefully worded to avoid specifics, but it was enough to make Ethan pause. A similar story surfaced from Philadelphia in 1985. Voss's privileges were suspended for 6 months due to inventory issues. In Indianapolis, a 1981 report mentioned his departure after unexplained equipment losses. None of these incidents had cost Voss's medical license, and he always landed at another hospital, his charm and volunteer work smoothing the way. But 4 hospitals in 12 years? For a specialized pulmonologist, that kind of movement felt off, like a pattern of avoiding scrutiny. Ethan shared his findings with Sarah over breakfast one morning, the kitchen radio softly playing Phil Collins. Sarah, still in her scrubs from a night shift, frowned as she sipped her coffee. Inventory discrepancies could mean anything, she said, her nurse's mind analyzing. Hospitals lose supplies all the time: bad record-keeping, overworked staff. But a senior doctor like Voss? He wouldn't be handling supplies himself. That's for residents or aides. Her words stuck with Ethan, planting a seed of doubt. Why would a respected physician, known for his dedication, keep running into these issues? And why did they always seem to follow him? The seed grew into something more when Ethan ran into Dr. Voss unexpectedly. He decided to donate some of Lily's and used medical supplies, oxygen masks, tubing, medications that were nearing their expiration dates. It was a painful decision, like letting go of a piece of hope, but he couldn't let them go to waste when other kids needed them. He drove to a Rite Aid on Grant Street, one of the few pharmacies in Pittsburgh with a donation program for pediatric supplies. As he carried his boxes through the aisles, he nearly bumped into a man pushing a cart loaded with portable oxygen tanks, the same kind Lily used for emergencies. It was Dr. Voss, looking harried in his gray suit, his tie loosened. "Mr. Caldwell," Voss said, his smile tight. "Didn't expect to see you here." Ethan explained he was donating Lily's supplies, his voice catching as he mentioned her name. Voss nodded, his expression sympathetic. "That's generous of you. It's hard, I know." He gestured to his cart. "I'm picking up some tanks for the hospital. Budget cuts, you know. Sometimes we have to get creative." Ethan nodded, but something felt wrong. He drove home, the encounter nagging at him. When he told Sarah, her frown deepened. "That's odd," she said, setting down her coffee mug. "Hospitals don't send attending physicians to buy supplies at pharmacies. There are strict procurement rules, certified suppliers, chain of custody for insurance. If they're short, they'd send a resident or a purchasing agent, not someone like Voss." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat at his kitchen table, the hum of a refrigerator and the distant wail of a siren filling the silence. Sarah's words echoed: procurement rules, chain of custody. He thought about Voss's hospital history, the missing supplies, the scooter found in the sewer. Was it possible Voss was involved? The idea seemed absurd. A doctor who'd cared for Lily, who'd comforted them after her disappearance. But the pattern was there, and Ethan's accountant's mind couldn't ignore it. He decided to call Voss, not sure what he'd say, but needing to hear his voice, to gauge his reaction. It was past 6 p.m., too late for hospital admin staff, but doctors often worked late. He dialed the number from the hospital directory, his heart pounding as the rotary phone clicked with each turn. The phone rang 4 times, and Ethan was about to hang up when Voss answered. Dr. Voss speaking. His voice was calm, professional, but there was a slight edge, like he was distracted. "Dr. Voss, it's Ethan Caldwell," Ethan said, his mouth dry. "I'm sorry to call so late. I've been going through Lily's case files, trying to make sense of things after the scooter was found." There was a pause, too long for comfort. "Of course, Mr. Caldwell," Voss said, his tone softening. "Finding that scooter must have brought it all back. I can't imagine how hard this is." Ethan pushed forward, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I was looking at your statement from 2 years ago. You were at the hospital the night Lily disappeared, right?" Another pause. When Voss spoke, the warmth was fading. "No, I left at 6 p.m. My shift ended. The police verified my keycard records." His words were clipped, precise. Ethan pressed on, his accountant's instinct kicking in. "I've been reading about your time at other hospitals. Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Indianapolis. You moved around a lot. 4 hospitals in 12 years. There were issues with supplies, right? Inventory discrepancies." The silence stretched so long Ethan thought the call had dropped. Then Voss's voice came, cold and sharp. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Mr. Caldwell. My career moves are normal for medicine. Hospitals are bureaucratic, always looking for someone to blame for misplaced equipment. The police cleared me 2 years ago. I cooperated fully." Ethan's hand shook on the receiver. "I'm just trying to understand what happened to Lily. The scooter was dumped recently. Someone kept it all this time." Voss's tone turned icy. "You're grieving, I get it. But these questions, this digging into my past, it sounds like you're accusing me of something. Those oxygen tanks at the pharmacy. They're for the hospital, as I explained. You're seeing patterns that aren't there." His voice rose, controlled but laced with anger. "I tried to help you. Came to the police station when they found the scooter, out of respect for Lily's memory. And this is how you repay that? By harassing me." "I'm not harassing," Ethan started, but the line went dead. Voss had hung up. Ethan stared at the phone, his pulse racing. The doctor's reaction wasn't what he'd expected. Not confusion or sadness, but a cold, defensive fury. It was the kind of anger that felt like it was hiding something. Ethan sat back, his mind spinning. Voss's hospital history, the pharmacy encounter, the scooter dumped after 2 years. It all pointed to a man who was more than he seemed. But accusing a respected doctor, a community figure, was a leap. What if Ethan was wrong, letting grief twist coincidences into conspiracies? Yet the pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was chilling. He considered calling Detective Holt, sharing what he'd found, but hesitated. What did he have? A few old articles, a strange encounter at a pharmacy, a phone call that left him uneasy? It wasn't enough, not yet. But Voss's voice, that controlled rage, echoed in his mind. Ethan knew he was onto something, even if he couldn't prove it. The truth about Lily was out there, and Dr. Voss was at the center of it. What Ethan didn't know was how close he was to confronting that truth face to face, and how dangerous that confrontation would be. Ever noticed something off about a trusted figure in your life? Maybe a teacher, a coach, or even a doctor who gave you a bad feeling. What red flags tip you off? Share your stories in the comments below. Your instincts might help someone else see the truth. Ethan Caldwell's phone call with Dr. Gregory Voss in July 1989 left him rattled, the doctor's icy anger echoing in his mind like a warning. For 2 years, since Lily vanished from UPMC Children's Hospital in July 1987, Ethan and Sarah had clung to fading hope, their lives defined by grief and unanswered questions. The discovery of Lily's Care bare sticker-covered mobility scooter in the Monongahela River's sewer system had reignited their search, pointing to someone who'd hidden it for 2 years before dumping it. Ethan's digging into Voss's past, 4 hospitals, repeated inventory discrepancies, a strange pharmacy encounter, had turned his suspicion into a conviction. Voss wasn't just a doctor who'd cared for Lily. He was hiding something, and Ethan's call had hit a nerve. But what came next would push Ethan into a nightmare he hadn't prepared for. It was the evening of July 12, 1989, Wednesday, the Pittsburgh air thick with summer humidity. Ethan was home alone, Sarah at her night shift in the ER, the house quiet except for the hum of a box fan in the living room. He sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by his makeshift case files, newspaper clippings, Pittsburgh Crime Watch newsletters, notes on Voss's hospital history. The rotary phone sat silent, its cord coiled like a snake. Ethan was jotting down questions for Detective Karen Holt, planning to share his findings when the doorbell rang. It was sharp, insistent, cutting through the stillness. He glanced at the clock. 7:45 p.m. Sarah wasn't due home for hours, and neighbors rarely stopped by unannounced. His stomach tightened as he walked to the door, peering through the peephole. Dr. Gregory Voss stood on the porch, his gray suit rumpled, his tie missing, a stark contrast to the polished Dr. Ethan knew. His face was drawn, eyes darting, a leather satchel slung over his shoulder. Ethan hesitated, his hand on the knob, but opened the door, thinking maybe Voss had come to explain himself. "Dr. Voss," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the unease creeping up his spine. "What are you doing here?" Voss's smile was thin, forced. "We need to talk, Ethan. About your call. About Lily." His voice was low, almost a whisper, but there was something off, a tremble that wasn't grief or sympathy. Before Ethan could respond, Voss stepped inside, uninvited, and shut the door behind him. That's when Ethan saw it. A glint of metal in Voss's hand, a small revolver, its barrel pointed loosely at the floor, but close enough to make a point. Ethan's heart pounded, but he kept his voice calm, years of balancing ledgers teaching him to hide panic. "What's this about, Dr. Voss? Why the gun?" Voss's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on the satchel. "You've been asking questions, digging into things that don't concern you. My career, my past. You think you're clever, don't you? Stirring up trouble." His voice was sharp now, the warmth Ethan once trusted gone. "I tried to help you. Came to the police when they found that scooter, out of respect, and you repay me by accusing me." Ethan raised his hand slowly, his mind racing. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just trying to find my daughter." Voss's laugh was bitter, almost a snarl. "You're closer than you think, Ethan, but you're ruining everything." Voss gestured with the gun, motioning toward the door. "We're going for a drive. You're going to see what you've done." Ethan's thoughts scrambled. Call Sarah. Call the police. Stall. But Voss's eyes were wild, unpredictable. What about Sarah? Ethan asked, buying time. She's at work. If I don't show up, she'll know something's wrong. Voss's jaw tightened. Sarah stays out of this, or she'll regret it. Move. Ethan grabbed his jacket, his eyes scanning for a way to leave a sign. As Voss pushed him toward the car, a beat-up Ford sedan parked crookedly in the driveway. Ethan slipped a folded note into the mailbox, a scribbled plea. Voss took me. Call Holt. It was a long shot, but Sarah might check the mail when she got home. The drive was silent, the city lights fading as they left Pittsburgh streets for the winding roads of the Laurel Highlands, a rugged stretch of forest an hour east. Ethan sat in the passenger seat, Voss's gun resting on his lap, one hand on the wheel. The doctor's composure was fraying, his knuckles white, muttering under his breath. You don't understand, he said at one point, his voice almost pleading. I protected her. She needed me. Ethan's blood ran cold. Lily, he asked, barely above a whisper. Voss didn't answer, his eyes fixed on the road, but the words hung heavy. Protected her from what? The implication made Ethan's stomach churn, but he forced himself to stay calm, to wait for a chance to act. The car turned onto a gravel path, the headlights cutting through dense trees. They stopped at a clearing, a renovated hunting lodge looming in the dark, its wood-paneled walls barely visible. Voss ordered Ethan out, the gun steady now, his earlier agitation replaced by a grim resolve. Inside, he said, pushing Ethan toward the lodge. Ethan's mind raced. Lily, the scooter, Voss's hospital history. The pieces were falling together, but what he was about to find inside would shatter everything he thought he knew about his daughter's disappearance. The air in the Laurel Highlands was cool, a stark contrast to Pittsburgh's summer heat. As Ethan Caldwell stepped out of Dr. Gregory Voss's car, the revolver still pointed at him. It was late on July 12th, 1989, and the hunting lodge before them stood isolated, its windows dark, a propane generator humming faintly in the distance. Ethan's heart pounded. His note left in the mailbox a faint hope that Sarah or someone would find it. Voss's words, I protected her. She needed me, echoed in his mind, each one a knife twisting deeper. For 2 years, Ethan and Sarah had lived with the agony of Lily's disappearance. The recent discovery of her mobility scooter in the Monongahela sewer system reigniting their desperate search. Now, standing in front of this lodge, Ethan felt closer to the truth than ever. But the cost of that truth was about to become clear. Voss pushed him through the front door, the smell of damp wood and kerosene hitting Ethan like a wall. The lodge was sparsely furnished, wood-paneled walls, a sagging couch, a single bulb flickering overhead. Voss locked the door behind them, his movements jerky, like a man fighting to keep control. Upstairs, he ordered, gesturing to a narrow staircase. Ethan climbed, his legs heavy, each step a battle against the dread pooling in his gut. At the top was a locked door, reinforced with a deadbolt, an unusual feature for a hunting lodge. Voss fumbled with a key, his hand shaking, and pushed it open. Go, he said, the gun nudging Ethan's back. The attic room was small, lit by a single lantern casting long shadows. Medical equipment lined one wall, oxygen tanks, 4 stands, a box of syringes, all outdated but functional, like something scavenged from a hospital basement. In the corner, on a narrow cot, sat a girl, 5 years old now, her blonde curls tangled, her face pale under an oxygen cannula. She wore a faded hospital gown, too small, the rainbow pattern barely visible. It was Lily. Ethan's breath stopped, his knees buckling. Lily, he whispered, stepping forward, but Voss grabbed his arm, the gun pressing into his side. Don't, Voss snapped. The girl looked up, her blue eyes dull, confused. Dr. Gregg, she said, her voice small, breathless from her heart condition. Who's that man? Ethan's world shattered. Lily didn't recognize him. His daughter, his little girl who'd giggled over Care Bear stickers and clutched his hand during hospital stays, stared at him like a stranger. It's me, Lily. Your dad, he said, his voice breaking. She shook her head, scooting back on the cot. Dr. Gregg says my parents are gone. He takes care of me now. Voss's grip tightened, his voice low. She's better off with me. You and Sarah were always working, always distracted. I gave her what she needed. Ethan's shock turned to rage, but the gun kept him still. What did you do to her? He demanded, his eyes locked on Lily, searching for the spark he knew. The room told a story of its own. Drawings covered the walls, childish sketches of Care Bears, rainbows, and a figure labeled Dr. Gregg in wobbly crayon. A small table held medical charts, meticulously filled out in Voss's handwriting, tracking Lily's oxygen levels and heart medications. It was a twisted imitation of a hospital, a prison disguised as care. You were going to let her die, Voss said, his voice rising, almost pleading. Her heart condition, a hospital's budget cuts, they couldn't save her. I could. I did. Ethan's mind reeled. Voss wasn't just a predator. He deluded himself into believing he was Lily's savior, twisting his obsession into a warped sense of duty. Ethan tried to reach Lily again, his voice soft. Lily, sweetheart, remember Sparkle? Your unicorn? I brought it to the hospital every day. Her eyes flickered, a moment of recognition, but Voss cut in. Enough, he hissed. You're confusing her. She's mine now. The words were a gut punch, but Ethan saw the fear in Lily's eyes, the way she clutched her gown. She was alive, but brainwashed, her memories of her parents buried under 2 years of Voss's lies. Ethan's note in the mailbox felt like a lifeline now. If only Sarah would find it. As if on cue, the sound of gravel crunching outside broke the tension. Headlights flashed through the attic window, followed by the crackle of a megaphone. Gregory Voss, this is the Pittsburgh police. Come out with your hands up. Ethan's heart leapt. Sarah must have found the note, alerted Detective Holt. Voss's face twisted in panic, the gun wavering. You did this. He spat at Ethan, dragging him toward the stairs. You ruined everything. Ethan seized the moment, shoving Voss against the wall, the gun clattering to the floor. He grabbed Lily, her small body light but trembling, and ran for the door as police boots pounded outside. Voss scrambled after them, shouting, She needs me. But the tactical team, armed with flashlights and revolvers, stormed in. Voss froze, his hands raised, his face crumpling as he realized it was over. Ethan held Lily tight, whispering, You're safe now. As officers cuffed Voss, Lily clung to him, confused but quiet, her breathing uneven. The police led them outside, where Sarah was waiting, her face streaked with tears. She ran to Lily, sobbing, but Lily flinched, still calling for Dr. Gregg. The truth was a knife. Their daughter was alive, but the damage Voss had done ran deep, and the road ahead would be anything but easy. What's the most shocking twist you've encountered in a true crime case? Maybe a betrayal you never saw coming, or a discovery that changed everything. Share it in the comments below to keep this story's impact alive. The night of July 12, 1989, marked the end of a 2-year nightmare for Ethan and Sarah Caldwell, but it was also the beginning of a new kind of pain. Lily, their 5-year-old daughter, was alive, rescued from a remote hunting lodge in the Laurel Highlands, where Dr. Gregory Voss had held her captive since her disappearance from UPMC Children's Hospital in July 1987. The police tactical team, alerted by Sarah finding Ethan's note in the mailbox, had moved fast, surrounding the lodge and taking Voss into custody without a shot fired. Ethan and Sarah sat in the back of an ambulance, Lily between them, her small body shivering under a blanket, her oxygen cannula still in place. But the reunion they dreamed of was bittersweet. Lily didn't know them, her eyes searching for Dr. Gregg, the man who'd brainwashed her into believing her parents were dead. Lily was rushed to Allegheny General Hospital, her congenital heart disease worsened by 2 years of inconsistent care. Doctors worked to stabilize her, noting her malnourishment and the emotional trauma etched into her vacant stare. Sarah, her nurse's instincts kicking in despite her exhaustion, stayed by Lily's side, holding her hand, whispering stories about Sparkle the unicorn to spark a memory. Ethan watched, his heart breaking as Lily pulled away, confused, calling for Voss. The doctors warned that her psychological recovery would be a long road, Years of therapy to undo the lies Voss had fed her. Her heart condition, already severe, had deteriorated. She'd need surgery soon, and even then, her prognosis was uncertain. The Caldwells clung to the fact that she was alive, but the girl they'd lost in 1987 wasn't fully back. At the Pittsburgh Police Department, Detective Karen Holt interrogated Voss, who sat in a stark room, his polished demeanor gone. His confession, delivered in a flat, detached tone, was chilling. He'd been abusing Lily during her hospital stays, starting with small manipulations, extra attention, gifts like coloring books, to gain her trust. When she began to resist, threatening to tell her parents, he panicked. On July 7, 1987, he used his key card to access the hospital after hours, disabling the service entrance camera with the maintenance key he'd stolen. He'd wheeled Lily out in her mobility scooter, sedating her with stolen medication to keep her quiet. He took her to the Hunting Lodge, a property he'd renovated as a hideout, using pilfered supplies to manage her heart condition. His volunteer work at children's shelters, he admitted, gave him access to vulnerable kids, a pattern that stretched back years. Lily wasn't his first victim. Police later found records suggesting similar discrepancies at other hospitals, prompting a wider investigation. Voss's obsession with Lily was rooted in a delusion. He saw himself as her savior, believing her parents were neglectful, too busy with work to care for her properly. He'd kept her scooter and medical equipment in the lodge's basement, planning to flee with her under fake identities once the case faded from the news. The scooter's disposal in the sewer was a miscalculation. He dumped it during a June rainstorm, thinking it would wash away, but it got caught in a grate. His confession was matter-of-fact, as if he still believed he'd done nothing wrong. "She needed me," he repeated, even as Holt pressed him on the abuse, the lies, the stolen years. He showed no remorse, only anger at being caught. For Ethan and Sarah, the confession was a double-edged sword. It answered the question of what happened to Lily, but it revealed a horror they could barely process. Voss hadn't just taken their daughter. He'd stripped her of her identity, her memories, her trust. The police investigation expanded, with Lieutenant Emily Carter leading a task force to comb Voss's records for other victims. His hospital suspensions, once dismissed as bureaucratic, now pointed to a pattern of theft and manipulation. The Caldwells cooperated, sharing Ethan's research from the Pittsburgh Crime Watch group, which helped connect the dots. But the victory felt hollow. Lily's therapy sessions began, her small voice struggling to articulate the past 2 years. She'd ask for Dr. Gregg, then cry, confused by her own memories. Ethan and Sarah took turns staying at the hospital, reading her stories, showing her photos, trying to rebuild the bond Voss had broken. The community rallied, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette running stories about Lily's rescue, and the Crime Watch group printing a special newsletter hailing Ethan's persistence. But the Caldwells shied away from the spotlight, focusing on Lily. Her heart surgery was scheduled for August 1989, a risky procedure that would determine her future. Ethan and Sarah faced it together, their marriage strained but unbroken, their love for Lily the one constant. They knew the road ahead would be long. Lily's physical and emotional scars would take years to heal, if they ever fully did. But she was alive, and that was enough to keep them fighting. Lily Caldwell's story is a haunting reminder of how trust can be weaponized, how monsters can hide behind titles like doctor or volunteer. In July 1987, a 3-year-old girl vanished from the place meant to protect her, leaving Ethan and Sarah Caldwell in a 2-year nightmare. The discovery of her mobility scooter in 1989 cracked open a case that revealed Dr. Gregory Voss's betrayal, a man who twisted care into control, stealing not just Lily's freedom, but her sense of family. Today, in July 1989, Lily is back with her parents, but her recovery is just beginning. Her heart condition and the trauma inflicted by Voss will shape her life for years, yet her parents' love and resilience shine through, a testament to the strength it takes to rebuild after unimaginable loss. This case hits hard because it exposes the vulnerabilities we all face, trusting those who seem above reproach, believing systems will protect the ones we love. Pittsburgh in the 80s was a city of tight-knit communities, where people relied on neighbors, doctors, and institutions. Lily's story forces us to ask, how well do we know those we trust? The Caldwells' fight for their daughter, Ethan's relentless digging, and the Pittsburgh Crime Watch Group's support show what it means to refuse to give up, even when hope feels lost. As Lily faces her next surgery, her family holds on to the belief that love can heal what was broken, one small step at a time. What can we learn from Lily's story? It's a call to stay vigilant, to question those in power, to listen to that gut feeling when something feels off. We'd love to hear your thoughts. What lessons does this case teach you? Have you followed a story from the 80s that changed how you see the world? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep this conversation going. If Lily's story moved you, consider supporting the Crime O'Clock to keep these stories alive. Check out our Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and give this video a thumbs up if you want more true crime mysteries. Next week, we're diving into another chilling hospital case from the 1980s that will leave you stunned. Thanks for joining us at the Crime O'Clock, where we uncover the truth, one tick at a time. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.